Hello, welcome back to another video. Today's video is all about Harvest League. We're talking about changes to slam skills, Harvest boss skill raise, Harvest League crafting options, and more. Hope you guys enjoy and let's jump right into it. New and changed slam skills in Path of Exile Harvest. In Path of Exile Harvest, we've created a new category of skills called slams. We've introduced one new support and one new slam skill, while several existing skills have been recategorized as slams. Today's news post reveals which skills are now considered slams, how they've been improved, and information about the new slam called Earth Shatter. In general, we're looking to provide more support for two-handed playstyles and builds that hit slower but hit harder. These changes came alongside improvements to 200 base types, more passive skill tree support, improvement to war cries, and more. The Fist of War support. Alongside our announcement of Harvest, we revealed the new Fist of War support that works with all slams except Vaal slams and Ancestral War Chief. Every few seconds, an ancestor appears above your character and perms your slam in unison with you, creating a supercharged slam dealing much more damage with an increased area effect. The following skills can be used with Fist of War support: Ground Slam, Tectonic Slam, Earthquake, Earth Shatter, Sunder, Ice Crash, Consecrated Path, Perforate, Leap Slam, Doriani's Touch. Earth Shatter. Earth Shatter is a new level 12 slam attack that sends out 5 damaging fissures in all directions when you slam the ground. At the end of each fissure, a spike bursts from the ground and remains for a short time. If the spikes are in the area of another slam or war cry used by you or an allied player, the spikes will explode, dealing damage in an area around them. The range of the fissures combined with the area of the explosion spikes ends up spreading damage over a large area, with explosions overlapping near the location you slammed. You can alternate between slamming with Earth Shatter and using a war cry, letting you kill enemies around you by detonating your spikes while simultaneously preparing to exert your next use of the skill. You can also easily leap slam onto your spikes to trigger them while you move. Any exploding spike can detonate other spikes near it, so you can leave a trail of spikes with repeated slams, then set them off by leaping onto one of them. Whoa! Okay, this is cool. I mean, the thing that Warcry can shatter them, that is awesome. Tectonic Slam. Tectonic Slam has received an impressive new visual effect and no longer uses charged slams. It instead counts endurance charges to grant more area effect and additional damage cracks in the ground. This improves the reward for investing in the endurance charges by providing both a larger and more consistent area effect. It now consumes an endurance charge every 3 slams rather than at random 35% chance. The additional cracks that endurance charge generates can spread out further from the base impact and are more deterministic. Enchantment that provides granted a chance for a charge slam now grants additional chance for cracks. Perforate. Perforate now provides flat physical damage that scales at the gem level. The distribution of its spikes in blood stance has been made more consistent. A higher percentage of its spikes should hit a small target, and investment in area effect and or the number of spikes should keep this percentage of spikes hitting consistent. Sandstan's base area starts off slightly smaller but increases at gem levels. Perforate also provides 1 additional spike at all levels and also grants 2 additional spikes if you've changed stances recently. Cool. The issue with Perforate in the past was that in Sandstance there were large gaps between spikes, which meant that enemies within those gaps would be missed. The extra spikes it now provides an additional area effect, vastly improves the number of targets that can be hit by single slam. I mean, okay, so what they did is made Sandstance nicer. Okay, let's read on Bloodstance. In Bloodstance, increased area effect used to result in a loss to single target damage, and the extra spikes from the Perforate enchantment would be placed outside of the range of most small enemies and therefore wouldn't contribute any damage to single target. These changes to Perforate improve its ability to hit enemies more reliably and with a better spread of damage. Man, like, I just can't get around of how tiny the Perforate and Blood stances. Like, the Sand stance actually is not so bad. Perforate and Sand stance is alright. But it is so tiny in Blood stance. So tiny. is like teeny weeny tiny. Okay, Sunder, as part of our effort to encourage slower and heavier hitting slams, Sunder has become a much wider and larger but slower cascade. Using Sunder while one cascade is still in motion will cause the existing cascade to end prematurely. These cascades will always travel a minimum length, so you can still use Sunder effectively with multi-strike and fast-hitting weapons when close to enemies. It still releases shockwaves, which can overlap when they hit enemies. Leveling the gem no longer scales its radius, but instead scales its area effect. Overall, it now provides a better area effect for slower hitting weapons. Earthquake, Ground Slam and Ice Crash. These skills are receiving numerical changes which will be revealed closer to launch. In general, the idea is to make them generally stronger. Other slam skills. The other skills that are now categorized as slams are mostly unchanged but have had their visual effects improved and can be used with the Fist of War support. Check out the new slams in action in this video here! I mean... okay. That Warcry did more than that Perforate. Oh, this is new Sunder. Oh, it is slower. It is much slower. It's just hilarious. Look, he's still missing this one rare with Perforate. Come on. You could have at least showed some... Oh, Ground Slam looking good. Earthquake also looking good. Jeebus! Earthquake is so Gucci. Oh god. This is Ice Crash. I mean, it looks pretty insane. Oh, the tiny teeny weeny Perforate. I mean, can't get over that. Oh, this guy looks so cool. Wow. Okay, this one is so cool. Ah, yeah, that was the new skill. Oh, so that is the new skill. I see. Oh, because it looks like Perforate. So yeah, now I can see it leaves a spike. So of course you do lots of damage. Oh damn! Here I was dissing on Perforate. I mean, Perforate, but better. And then we have Harvest Challenge rewards. The Harvest League introduces 40 new challenges. Upon completing them, you will earn exclusive microtransaction rewards, such as the Harvest Footprints, Harvest Cloak, and Harvest Portal, at 12, 24, and 36 challenges respectively. Completing challenges also grants you the pieces of the Harvest Totem Pole hideout decoration. Let's check these suckers out. Footprints. Oh, there's little seedlings. Cool. This is pretty cool footprints. Cloak. Has some kind of... But the portal is so cool. Look at the portal. Holy moly, I love the... Oh, look at... Oh, jeeps. Okay, the portal is the best one. Definitely gonna go for 40-40. You'll be able to check out the full list of challenges to complete for these rewards when Path of Exile Harvest launches on PC on June 19th. Slay Harvest's ultimate boss and win a laptop provided by Alienware. Dun dun dun. In Path of Exile Harvest, there are 3 significant boss fights which all lead towards Harvest Pinnacle Boss. The first person to slay the final boss in Harvest Hardcore Solo Self-Found League will win a laptop provided by Alienware. The exact way to reach this boss will be explained in more detail closer to launch. Alienware has generously provided 2 Alien M17 gaming laptops as part of our Harvest Endgame event. I mean, I wouldn't mind winning this. In addition to the first player to slay the endgame boss in Hardcore Solo Self-Found, anyone who slays this boss in any PC version of Harvest Solo Self-Found, Harvest Hardcore solo cell phone, Harvest Hardcore within the first week on our main international server, so not on the Tencent or Garen server, will also go in the draw to win a laptop provided by Alienware. The cutoff for participating is 9 AM Monday 29 June PDT. To add even more excitement to the mix, we're also providing ultimate microtransaction prize packages to 10 other players from any Harvest League who killed the endgame Harvest boss within the first week. This prize will be drawn at random. Note that the person who wins first kill for Hardcore Solo Cell Phone won't be eligible for these additional prizes. Players can only enter once per character. Additional kills don't reward additional chances. GGG employees are not eligible for prizes. To our console players, we plan to run a similar event for you too. We've reached out to some of our friends at the console companies and have asked if they could provide hardware for the event. We're still waiting to hear back, but if we aren't able to get prizes from them, we'll provide similar microtransaction bundle for console players. We'll share more news about this soon. In Path of Exile Harvest, there are 3 significant boss fights which all lead towards Harvest Pinnacle boss. The first person to slay this boss in Harvest Hardcore Soul Cell will win a laptop provided by Alienware. Okay, there's the doggy. There's a big plant. Oh, no, that's Foxy guy. This is some kind of Spidey's. And then there's the big old plant. More Harvest crafting options. We previewed several new crafting options that can be acquired in Path of Exile Harvest. There are over 200 new ones being introduced, which means there are still plenty left to reveal. Later this week, we plan to reveal the full list of them. Awesome! Okay, I like this kind of transparency. In the meantime, we're ready to preview another 13. Wow. Lucky number, huh? Lucky 13. Change a unique item into Parandas coins. Rare unique items are worth more Parandas coins. Change a sacrifice or mortal fragment into another random fragment of that type. Nice! Mortal for Uber Ziri frags. Change a Pale Court key into another Pale Court key. I wonder if they have the same thing for Uber Elder frags. Would be cool. Add an implicit modifier to a cluster jewel. Remove a critical modifier from an item. Augment an item with a new life modifier. Oh yeah. Augment an item with a new life modifier with lucky values. Even better. Sacrifice a map, add 1 free infused domination craft to your map device. Or rampage crafts. Reforge the links between sockets on an item. It is much more likely to create a larger number of link sockets. Whoa, let's go. Upgrades a normal item to a random rarity. It is much more likely to be upgraded to a higher rarity. So you can use like bases, shaped bases or whatever bases. You can make like shaped headhunters and such, shaped Calls of the Brotherhood. Reforge a rare item with a new random modifiers. It is much more likely to have a higher average modifier level. So that this is like a more lucky Chaos Orb. Set an item's implicit modifier to a random synthesized modifier. The item can be influenced or synthesized. What? You could get explodey weapons! Explodey mod weapons. You'll notice that one of these options allows you to roll a new implicit mod on a jewel. Here are some examples of potential outcomes. Okay. Okay. Oh! Wow, this is like min-maxing heaven, guys. Oh, right, this is what I'm hyped for. Look at this. Hide, remove only tabs. Oh my god, please give me now. The Sustenance. Energy from within with 2 corrupted implicits. Wings of Entropy has an Ezomite Axe base type, though existing items remain as a Sundering Axe. Now grants 7 to 10% chance to block spell hits, slightly higher, 8 to 10% chance to block attack hits, slightly higher, has 75 to 100 to 165 to 200 added fire damage for main hand attacks, and add chaos damage for offhand attacks. It now has 60 to 80% increased physical damage, slightly lower due to the change in base type. Existing versions can be updated to new values with Divine Orb. You encourage the Blurred Path of Exile Harvest patch notes. So, 200 weapons. We've reviewed all 200 weapon base types and have adjusted their attack damage, speed, and implicits, with the goal of giving 200 weapons builds a different feel to their dual wield and one-hand counterparts. To ensure that the damage you gain by using a two-hander made up for the lack of block and slower attack speed, all 200 weapons have their base damage increased by at least 15%, with Axes in particular gaining even more damage. Okay. So Aziri's axe is gonna be meta. Let's go. Thank you. The Shining Monument, the White Knight. Where decay festers, I shall expunge it and leave in its place a shining monument. Chainbreaker is one of the new timeless jeweled keystones. Chainbreaker regenerates 3 rage per second, increase and reduction to mana regeneration rate, instead applies to rage generation rate. Lose 5 rage when you hit an enemy, no more than once every 0.3 seconds. The corruption cluster has changed. Here's how it looks now. Increased chaos damage, wither you inflict expires 10% slower. Increased chaos damage, increased effect of withered. Wither applies 6% increased chaos damage taken and can be inflicted up to 15 times. Game balance in Path of Exile Harvest. Every expansion provides an opportunity for us to reassess the current meta, improve game mechanics that are currently weak, and reduce the power of those that are excessively strong. You'll see more detail in the patch notes tomorrow, but in the meantime, our team has outlined some of the changes you'll be reading about and the goals we had in mind while making these decisions. Game balance in Path of Exile Harvest. In Path of Exile Harvest, we're putting much of our balance focus on brands, Warcries, and two-handed weapons. As a result of Delirium going core, we've also taken the opportunity to balance cluster jewels and their place within the game. We worked to improve two-handed weapons with big slow hits by improving these investment options across the board. We've also lowered the output of some of the most excessively powerful builds from Delirium, like those that utilize the Purposeful Harbinger, Notable Passive, and the Archmage Stormbrand builds. Simultaneously, we've also introduced many new options and playstyles for people to gain new levels of power. Two-handed weapons and slow attacks. Two-handed melee weapons focus on great risks for great rewards, but over time their power has dropped relative to one-handed weapons. We intend to bring this power back while still keeping the risk. They are slower on average than one-handed weapons without the free mechanics that come with shields or dual wielding, but now have more defensive advantages available to them. Slow, heavy hits now deal enough damage to stun even the toughest bosses without as much investment in stun mechanics. Now, new sources of area effect and powerful inherent damage from skills and support free up passive points for life and defenses if you choose to, including new options for a defensive Warcry effect and a new armor keystone. All high-level two-handed melee weapons have been rebalanced, pushing greater disparity between weapon types. The goal is that every high-level two-handed weapon has a role and is an ideal base type for someone. For most two-handed weapon types, each weapon has its own implicit mode focusing on a specific mechanic associated with its weapon type. So more specialization here. There have been new additions to the passive skill tree providing power and utility, especially for melee characters, like the Tribal Fury notable that was once only available from Blight Anointments. Leech passives give much more total recovery per second for life leech than before, so reaching maximum leech is much easier for slow attacks and two-handed attacks with some accessible investment. Many skills intended to work well with two-handed weapons have been reviewed. Sunder, Static Strike, and Tectonic Slam were changed significantly, while many others had numeric changes. Some slow attacks with added damage have had it removed and their damage multiplier improved, as flat added damage inherently favors builds with high attack speed. Ground Slam, Earthquake, Ice Crash, Wall Ground Slam, and Wall Earthquake have had their added physical damage or added cold damage removed in exchange for improving their damage multiplier. Many of the new Warcries and the new Fist of War support for slam skills greatly benefit slower attacks, synergizing very well with two-handed weapons. There are now many powerful options to invest in for slow attacks rather than the handful of mechanics that existed previously. Herald of Purity has been changed from adding physical damage to granting more physical damage, gaining 12% more physical damage at gem level 20. That's nice. This was to provide an equal benefit to weapon attack regardless of their speed. Shockwave's support now has multiple cooldown charges. As the new Fist of War support doesn't work with the triggered shockwaves, Shockwave support is best suited for slow non-slam attacks. Dual Wield. The physical damage multiplier when dual wielding has been removed. No! This was originally added as a fix from half a decade ago to improve the damage of dual wielding relative to the higher damage of two-handed weapons and the overwhelming defensive power of shields at the time. This allows the two-handed weapons to remain the kings of damage while dual wielding is the king of speed with some defensive benefits. So the block stays, but the physical damage multiplier is removed. Brands. The design of brands make them very powerful for clearing out areas with very passive playstyle, as well as dealing damage to bosses with very little time spent standing still. This often meant brand characters weren't engaging with many challenging mechanics, instead running around waiting for enemies to die. We've known for some time that parts of these mechanics needed to change to tone down the advantages before we could introduce new brand skills, and have endeavored to make these changes without heavily impacting the core identity of brands. Brands now drop at their original or recalled location when the enemy they are attached to is slain. This prevents them chaining repeatedly out of the player's control, killing monsters that haven't had a chance to meet the player yet. Brand recall no longer refreshes the duration of brands. We very much appreciate the utility of brand recall, but it has played a significant part in making brand skills feel very passive. We want to move in the direction of players having to recast their brands more often, with the option to invest in brand duration to reduce how often one must recast brands. Brand recall has a longer cooldown and a lower value of cooldown recovery per level. We've added brand recall cooldown recovery to a number of places on the passive tree to give new avenues for investing in this rather than receiving the full bonus just for leveling the gem. We've lowered the detach duration of brands to bring them in line with mines, which also had their detach duration lowered when last reviewed. This is simply because the duration was unreasonably long, especially with the new and plentiful brand duration passives. Because of all of these changes, we've been able to slightly improve the power of Stone Brand, greatly improve Armageddon Brand, improve the utility and power granted by brand passives, add a new brand cluster, and of course introduce new brands including the Arcanist brand that lets you trigger many different spells using brands. The Hierophant brand node has also changed, mentioned below. Warcries. Warcries have changed significantly. Using a Warcry is now far more powerful than before, but comes with a longer use time and a longer cooldown. Cooldowns are no longer shared between Warcries. More nodes can be found in the Warcry reveal post. The goal of these changes is to have Warcries be something that has a far more significant impact on combat, with great reward for taking the risk of standing still and using an ability while surrounded. Using multiple different Warcries is now possible, and a reason to heavily invest in a mechanic that you're able to take advantage of multiple ways on a single character. For those that prefer the old playstyle, we've added the keystone that lets you use the Warcry instantly at the cost of being unable to take advantage of multiple Warcries. This isn't a keystone that's designed for characters that have heavily invested in Warcries, but rather for a character that have specific single Warcry they wish to take advantage of. Many new Warcry passive clusters have been added, providing more avenues for investment in cooldown recovery, faster use time, giving powerful damage bonuses when using exerted attacks, and rewarding the use of multiple Warcries. Many existing unique items with Warcry-related mods have been changed significantly, with some given entirely new effects, most notably the Warband shields. Stun. Changes to the power of slow attacks have resulted in it being much more easier to stun bosses, simply because of how much damage you can do in a single hit relative to their health. Rather than increasing the stun threshold, bosses now become immune to stuns for a short duration after being stunned. Oof, no perma-stun now. Most major bosses and map bosses have a stun immunity duration of 2 seconds. This duration is longer on powerful bosses like Guardians, the Shaper, the Elder and Cyrus, lasting 4 seconds. Stunning is now a great defensive advantage for slow, heavy-hitting characters without completely mitigating the threat of an encounter. Stun duration becomes more important as you can no longer chain together many short-duration stuns. Ascendancy changes. We've made some changes to the Hierophant, Chieftain and Berserker that we'll be revealing soon. These are changes to one major notable on each tree, focusing on creating powerful individual mechanics that greatly influence how you play rather than overloading ascendancies with a plethora of related stats. The Necromancer Corpse Pact notable now has a maximum of 200% increased attack and cast speed from consuming corpses, as it was possible to get the value to self-scale to problematic numbers using Arcanist brand. Keystones. We've added new keystones to the Marauder Duelist section of the tree. These allow investment in slow impale attacks, mitigating big hits with armor and making Warcries more accessible to non-Warcry invested builds. Each of these allow you to improve some weakness that certain strength-based characters, especially two-hand melee characters, could have. Many powerful keystones that were previously only available from Timeless Jewels have been moved to the passive tree, such as Glancing Blows, the Agnostic and Wind Dancer. Other passive tree changes. We've made a large number of changes to the passive tree with the intent of supporting recently introduced mechanics as well as providing more variety to clusters, especially those lacking obvious power. We wanted to add support for mechanics that have been added in the past few years that as of yet do not have adequate support on the passive tree. Some of these mechanics include Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, Warcries, Heralds, and Banners. The Warcry clusters that affect exerted attacks are very useful for slower attacks. The Martial Experience cluster is a good example of how total recovery per second from Life Leech has improved. Now taking the longer path through this cluster will give 220% increased total recovery per second from Life Leech, enough to cause a single hit to be able to leech up to 6.4% of your maximum life per second. These changes were made so a big hit against the boss still provides significant life leech per second, rather than having to attack rapidly to reach maximum life leech per second. Many passive skill clusters offer the same thing as other clusters, with the only difference being the location on the tree and the number of passive skills in the cluster. In this patch, we have endeavored to give each cluster its own identity and function. Critical strike multiplier values have been lowered from almost every passive as well as from some items. Critical based characters far exceed the non-critical characters later in the game. This will bring the two a little closer together. We've added a new indigo oil between the azure and violet oils. This has made more common oils slightly rarer without making rarer oils even rarer. Some notables will have updated oil costs as a result of changes to the passive tree. Not every indigo oil combination amulets will yield a notable yet. There are no new blighted notable passives and 2 existing blight notable passives are now on the passive tree. New ring and blighted map anointments have been added. Cluster Jewels. Cluster Jewels will remain in the game, available from Delirium encounters. Delirium encounters will be less common, but will drop significantly more Cluster Jewels than before, as we still want Cluster Jewels to be an accessible and major part of the character development, especially if you're actively trying to find them. Many Cluster Jewel notables were problematic when stacked multiple times. Rather than limiting notable to one, we've instead rebalanced or significantly changed these notables, or added caps to the maximum value you can receive from a certain kind of effect. Of particular note, Purposeful Harbinger now gives aura buffs from skills have 8% increased effect on you for each herald affecting you, up to 40%. This means that with 5 heralds on you and 1 Purposeful Harbinger notable, you can reach full effect, or you can use 3 heralds and 2 Purposeful Harbinger notables. Nice. Okay, so no more stacking 9 Purposeful Harbingers. Changes to the Warcries have meant that all Warcry Cluster Jewels notables have been reworked, which also introduces some new effects. Some Cluster Jewel brand notables have also been rebalanced. Weighing of notables and other modifiers have been adjusted, with the most powerful notables and 2 jewel sockets being much less common, as crafting an exceptional Cluster Jewels was far too easy. The unique jewels from the Simulacrum will still be available, though will be rarer as a result of Delirium not being in every area. Voices and Megalomaniacs are unchanged, while Split Personality is now limited to 2. This jewel was the go-to jewel for any attribute stacking build, so we want to push more variation. No keystones from any of the Delirium unique jewels have been changed, though like the Simulacrum jewels, these will be less frequent as you'll be encountering the unique bosses that drop them less frequently. These Cluster Jewel notables will no longer be available. Gladiatorial Combat, Deep Cuts, Intensity, Confident Combatant, no witnesses. Any existing notables already on jewels will be retained. Some notables or some of their effects have been moved to the passive tree, with deep cuts being the only exception. 3. Deep cuts was the one with the extra stack to impale. Val Molten Shell. Val Molten Shell was providing too much damage mitigation for too long with too little investment. This resulted in Val Molten Shell being used on a huge proportion of characters, including those that didn't get much armor beyond a Granite Flask. We intend to keep it as the best defensive Val skill for armor-invested characters, while bringing it closer to power of Val Grace. It will still last for a long duration, but now requires a greater value of armor to reach its cap and mitigates a much lower percentage of damage. While active, it also gives more armor instead of a flat value of armor, multiplying your existing armor value rather than giving an effect that is less relevant to armor investing characters. Val Molten Shell also removes and is removed by other guard skills. Previously only had this effect with Molten Shell. Molten Shell itself will remain unchanged. RIP! Cyclone. We have removed the stun immunity from Cyclone! Oh shit! Everybody was talking about this? No way! But made no other changes to it. This immunity was originally added to prevent implementation problems when positional desync was common, not as a core part of the skill's design. Being able to move while dealing damage is already a powerful defensive benefit, and melee attackers are usually more resistant to stuns. The skill will still make you immune to knockback, and Val Cyclone still retains its stun immunity. Oh my god. Holy shit. Archmage. Archmage support provided too significant a power increase for builds when built around very heavily. We've made changes to bring it more in line with other builds, while still noting that it's going to be a huge source of power for mana invested builds. It now provides less added lightning damage based on mana spent than it did before, down to 108% of mana cost at level 20 of the gem. We've changed most items that increase mana cost. Fevered Mind has been reworked and is now limited to 1. Voidbringer and Apex Rage now add a flat mana cost rather than percentage modifier. These items provided too great a damage multiplier from a single unique, as their once downside had become an upside. Oh man! We've added a new passive cluster on the tree that lets you increase the mana cost of your skills as a new avenue of investment, though at values much lower than what could be gained from these unique items. So this value used to be 127%. But it's gonna be so much harder to increase the mana cost now. Damn. Unique rebalance. We've made many changes to unique items that were either failing to achieve their desired goals, had fallen behind other competing items, or were not deemed interesting enough for our current standards for unique items. Our goal for each of these unique items is to make sure there is a place for them on characters, even if that place is while leveling, and to do this in more interesting ways where possible. Many of these changes are numerical, either because the item was already sufficiently interesting or because it would stray too much from a supporter's original intention when the item was designed. More information will be coming in the patch notes. 200 unique weapons have been reviewed and tweaked as a result of their base types being changed. Overall, rare items should be more competitive with the most powerful unique items, and there will be a greater variety of useful unique 200 weapons. A few unique weapons that provided too much power, especially after changes to their base types, have had some values lowered. Starforge, Disintegrator, and Hegemony's era will now have lower damage per second than on life, while other items remain the same or improved. Starforge received the most significant reduction of damage. It provides more physical damage than any other unique weapon by a huge margin, as it was designed before pure physical damage was a competitive way to build skills. It is more in line with the damage of other unique weapons while retaining its special shock area and life modifiers. It now has a custom implicit 30% increased global physical damage, as the Infernal Sword base type usually gives 30% increased elemental damage with attack skills. The Circle of Fear, Nostalgia, Regret, Anguish, and Guilt unique rings that affected heralds now give lower values of reservation cost reduction and lower values of buff effect. These rings provided too much power and were too obvious a choice for so many builds. Threshold Jewels. The unique Threshold Jewels for Dual Strike, Magma Orb, Molten Strike, and Fireball have been changed. They now provide effects that change how the skill is built or downsides to offset their beneficial effects, each acting as a way to change how you build or play a skill rather than a must-have boost at the cost of jewel slot. Glacial Hammer's Shattered Chains Threshold Jewel will no longer drop. All of these skills have been given increase to damage area or utility to compensate for the power loss from the Threshold Jewel. We'll continue to look at the roles of other Threshold Jewels over time, making changes when possible and appropriate. Slower projectiles. The slower projectile support gem now grants a lower value of less projectile speed than before. This is because this single support was massively multiplying the close range damage of certain skills, and all of them were being balanced around the values from this support. It also means we can be more generous with projectile speed granted by other sources. Molten Strike, Magma Orb, and Ball Lightning have had their damage and some other properties improved, as their close range damage is now affected by lower projectile speed. Other small changes. The Shakari Pantheon has had its modifiers changed to halve the duration of poison on you, and prevent you being poisoned while you have at least 5 poison effects on you. This Pantheon power trivialized a mechanic that was core of one of the 4 major guardians of the current endgame, and prevented poison being a threatening mechanic to any character. We've made improvements to Totem AI for certain skills that have specific targets like Blade Blast, and corpse skills like Death Knight Dead, Volatile Dead, Cremation, and Body Swap. Hexproof now gives immunity to curses on top of preventing any curse being applied. This means that if you gain Hexproof, you'll immediately remove any curses on you. This was an oversight that this wasn't already the case, and will mean that stealing Hexproof from enemies will now clear all curses off you. Conclusion. This outlines just a portion of the changes we'll see in Path of Exile Harvest. They are still subject to change prior to release, and you'll see more information in the patch notes tomorrow. We look forward to seeing how players wield the new power introduced in Path of Exile Harvest, and in the meantime we'll pour out flaws for our fallen meta builds. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out my stream if you are new here. Bye, bye, bye.